Fever, 1793, by Laurie Halse. Chapter 26, October 23rd, 1793. I think there is now that kind of weather fermenting which we so much want and has been so often wished for. Letter of John Walsh, Clerk, Philadelphia, 1793. Something rough lapped at my cheek. I turned away with a groan. It followed and rubbed again like a damp piece of burlap. I pushed it away and came up with a handful of orange fur. Silas, go away. Let me sleep. I haven't slept for years. Silas jumped on me and kneed it with his front paws. The weight on my empty stomach hurt too much. I sat up, my head spinning, my eyes opened slowly, the lashes sticking together. I blinked. An early winter quill had etched an icy pattern over the garden. My skirt looked as if it had been dusted with fine white flour. I shivered. I was cold, truly cold, not cold with a fever or gripe. I sneezed and bent to look closely at the white veil that lay over the weeds. Frost. I'm dreaming, I told Silas. The cat ignored me and pounced on a sluggish beetle that lumbered under a leaf. Starving men dream of food. I dream of frost. I rubbed my eyes and pushed myself to my feet. My back creaked as I rolled my shoulders. I breathed deeply. The cold air chilled my nose and crackled in my lungs. The fetid stench that had hung over the city for weeks was gone, replaced with brittle, pure air. I looked around the garden. No insects hovered over the dying plants or the well. The entire yard sparkled with diamonds of frost that quickly melted into millions of drops of water with a gentle kiss of the sun. Frost. This was no dream. Eliza! Eliza! Eliza stumbled out onto the porch, alarmed and confused. Look, Eliza, I cried. It's frost, the first frost, the end of the fever. She bent down to touch the pale crystals, then rubbed her cold fingertips over her lips. Lord have mercy, she whispered. We made it. She turned to me. We made it. We flung our arms around each other and jumped up and down, laughing for joy. Wait, Eliza said suddenly as she pulled away. The children. We should bring them out here. Let them breathe in the clean air. Do you think that's wise? Won't they be chilled? All the work we've done to cool them down, and you're worried they might catch a chill. It's just what they need. The bone-grinding fatigue and numbing hunger of the past weeks evaporated as we carried Grandfather's mattress down from the bedchamber and set it in the middle of the yard. Nell, Robert, and William fussed over when they were brought outside. They sat up enough to drink warm water sweetened with the last of the molasses and fell asleep as their skin cooled gently. A messenger from Joseph arrived at midday bearing fresh eggs, pumpkins, 3 kinds of bread, and a joint of beef. Farmers had come back into town following the frost, and their prices dropped as quickly as the temperature. The messenger cautioned us to stay away from the center of town for another week. There were sure to be new fever cases until summer's grip was well and truly broken. Eliza told me to eat slowly or I would be sick again. For a change, I listened to her. We fed the children small bits of meat and warm cider. Eliza and I shared a loaf of bread at the kitchen table. Never had such a plain meal brought such satisfaction. When the children fell asleep after the meal, I took a nap, even though it was the middle of the afternoon. I woke to the sound of heavy furniture being dragged across the floor. Eliza, what in the name of heaven? Eliza looked up. She had pushed the chest of drawers half the distance to the kitchen. I've been watching the signs. The way the birch leaves flip in the breeze, the shape of the clouds, and the color of the sun now that it's setting. I predict another frost tonight. We need to get all the furniture outside and expose it to the cold. It's the only way to destroy the pestilence. Come and help me with this chest. I thought it was a ridiculous notion, but I helped her carry the furniture we could handle outside. The children watched us as if it were completely normal to set furniture outside. Their fevers were broken and their stomachs full. They slept for hours, woke for food, then went back to sleep. Joseph himself arrived the next morning with the news that the market had reopened. The twins and Nell were resting on the mattress under the cherry tree when he strode across the yard and took all 3 in his arms. Eliza and I let our tears fall without shame. Joseph opened the small sack he carried. He took out tops for the boys and a small doll for Nell. toys he had made for them by himself. As the children tried to spin the tops on the lumpy mattress, Joseph joined us on the porch. He took both Eliza's hands in mine and held them in his. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you for giving me back my boys." "Balderdash," I said. "Nothing could keep those rapscallions down for long." "Pour yourself some cider and sit with us," said Eliza. We sat down comfortably and watched the children play. I poured a second mug of cider. "You'll hear from your mother soon, I wager," Joseph said. Eliza shot her brother a warning look, but he ignored it. "If I were you, I'd head down to the market," he continued. "That's where all the best gossips in town have gathered." I glanced at Eliza. "May I go?" "You don't need my permission," Eliza said. She was right. I could choose for myself. The market seemed like a festival, its stalls overflowing with food and rejoicing. It was noisier than ever before. Talk, talk, talk. Friends sharing the news, overblown laughter, strong-lunged farmers bellowing their wares, a welcome wave of noise and good cheer. I drifted from stall to stall, eavesdropping on good news and bad. Most of the conversations were about lost relatives and friends. Yellow fever had scattered the residents of Philadelphia to the four winds. No one could guess how long it would take until everyone was accounted for. "Mattie Cook," Mrs. Epler cried. "Thanks to God you survived. But you are so thin. Liebchen. You look like your mother. She works so hard. Here, 2 fat hens for you and your family, and have some eggs." "Thank you very much, Mrs. Epler," I said, pulling out my purse. No, money. My gift," the plump egg seller insisted. "How is Mrs. Cook?" "Did you go out to the country?" I laid the dead hens in my basket. "Mother is missing," I said. "Grandfather is dead." Mrs. Epler's hands flew to her cheeks. "You poor child." She pulled me close and squeezed me hard, her head barely as high as my shoulder. "Little Mattie, little Mattie." "It's fine, Mrs. Epler, I'll be fine." I unwrapped her arms from me. "I'm sure Mother will be home soon, but please ask folks if they've seen her." Of course," Mrs. Epler said, bobbing her head up and down. "I'll ask everyone in the whole city." I had to smile at that. The news would be halfway to New York by nightfall if Mrs. Epler had anything to do with it. All the farmers were cheerful and generous. I paid very low prices for peaches, carrots, and beets. Though my basket was full, I found room for a sack of hard candy and a small loaf of sugar. For the children, I told myself. I had to taste the candy, of course, to make sure it was not stale. I was so vigilant that I tasted several pieces. Nell, Robert, and William deserved the best. My shopping was done, and I had questioned everyone about Mother, but still I lingered, caught between wanting to leave and wanting to stay until I could sort out the thoughts battling in my head. What now? Should I travel to the Luddingtons' farm? Wait in town for a few more days? I looked over a selection of bruised apples. Part of me did not want to know what had happened. If Mother was dead, I'd have to sell the coffee house or have the orphans' court sell it for me. I'd get work as a scullery maid or move into the orphanage and do laundry. I looked past the apple seller to the haberdasher's window behind him. My face looked back at me from the thick glass. Mrs. Epler was right. I was thin. Yellow fever had certainly done away with vanity. I lifted my chin. The shape of my face looked for all the world like Mother's, her nose, her mouth. But my eyes were my own. I blinked. A scullery maid. Ridiculous. I was Matilda Cook, daughter of Lucille, granddaughter of Captain Williams Farnworth Cook of the Pennsylvania 5th Regiment. I could read, write, and figure numbers faster than most. I was not afraid of hard work. I would set my own course. Someone placed a hand on my elbow. "I hoped I might find you here," a low voice rumbled in my ear. My heart jumped. "Nathaniel!" I wanted to throw my arms around him or jump up and down, or I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I wanted to stop blushing. I tried to collect myself. "How are you?" I asked. "Think of something intelligent," I commanded myself. "Don't be a ninny." A slow smile spread across his face. Had he grown even taller? "Much better now that I found you," he said. His hand stayed on my elbow. "I'm sorry I didn't bring you flowers." "That's all right," I said. A ridiculous smile on my face. "I have your painting on the mantel. It was beautiful. You look quite well. Did you have the fever?" "No, we were most fortunate." His hand was still on my elbow, warm and friendly. I liked having it there. "Why don't I walk you home?" he suggested. We walked slowly, step, step, stop and talk, step, step, stop and talk. His voice had a low, sweet note in it like a cello, and his smile lit up every shadow. I stopped worrying about being a ninny. "I wanted to jump out the window when I saw you a few weeks ago," he said. "I thought you were safely in the country." "I was staying with Eliza and her family," I explained. "The coffee house had been broken into by intruders." He lifted my chin. "You look like you need a week's worth of cakes. Didn't Eliza feed you?" "There wasn't much food for anyone," I said. "What about you? What did you eat?" "You know Mr. Peel. He always does things in a unique way. You've heard of the collection of animals he has?" I nodded. Mr. Peel had opened a natural history museum in his house. We ate the specimens he had collected. Before they were treated with arsenic and stuffed, of course. "No, you didn't." "Yes, we did, and I'll never eat possum again, I promise you," said Nathaniel. "Disgusting." It was as much Master Peel's good humor that kept us going as much as anything. He stopped. We were in front of the coffee house. "Some days felt like we were trapped in a nightmare," he said. "It's hard to believe it's really over," I said. "It feels so strange, so sudden. We were supposed to go back to the way we lived before, but everything has changed." "The important things haven't changed at all," Nathaniel said. He stole an apple from my basket and took a bite. "I will always snatch apples from your basket. You have my solemn word." A carriage turned off High Street and stopped halfway down the block. The door opened, and out popped the head of Mrs. Henning, my neighbor, wearing an absurd feathered hat. Her children poured out behind her and rushed the door of their house. It looked like they were returning from nothing more serious than an afternoon's drive in the country. "Your mother will be home soon," Nathaniel said confidently. "She'll chase me off the front porch and try to marry you to a lawyer." "I won't let her," I said, standing taller. Nell squealed in the house and the twins laughed. Nathaniel and I had suddenly run out of things to say. "Well, I should go home," he mumbled. "I may stop in from time to time. Make sure you're well." "That would be nice," I said. "Don't worry, she'll be home soon." I tried to smile. No matter how kind he was, it couldn't erase the question that had haunted me all afternoon. What if she didn't come home at all?